Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Xiang. This episode is about a war between US and China. Not military war, but tech war, the war over 5G network. The US and China are locked in a race to dominate the next wave of wireless communications, and it just got ugly. High-speed communications, artificial intelligence, and big data promise to shape the coming decades, and neither country wants to fall behind. It is similar to the U.S. Soviet Union race into space and then to the moon. So far, China is taking its moonshot more seriously. China has more 5G subscribers than the US, not just in total number but per capita. It has more 5G smartphones for sale and at lower prices. And it has more widespread 5G coverage. Connections in China are, on average, faster than in the US. Where China has a definite edge is in the nuts and bolts of 5G. By year's end, China will have an estimated 690,000 5G base stations up and running across the country, compared with 50,000 in the US. In China, 5G phones are less expensive, $458 on average in the second quarter of this year, compared with $1,079 in the US. Analysts attribute China's lead in the rollout and adoption of 5G in large part to the heavy hand of Beijing. China's big telecom equipment vendors, Huawei Technologies Corporation and ZTE Corp, have been given the lion's share of 5G work in the country. The top-down approach has led to a more uniform version of 5G throughout the country. In the US, 5G progress has largely been limited to cities and sports stadiums, which are now sitting empty. Most US 5G investment comes from private sectors, but there is another factor holding the US back: a lack of wireless spectrum or airwaves devoted to 5G signals. The US airwaves have been tied up in disputes between the military and other federal agencies fighting for allocations. It could take another year for the Federal Communications Commission to solve the bottleneck. But when it comes to the apps, China's front-runner status is less well entrenched. For both the US and China, self-driving cars, remote surgeries, and automated factory floors are still years away from widespread use. The Pentagon is testing how lightning-fast 5G networks could transform warfare, from training and logistics to mission planning and communications to new battlefield tactics like the deployment of drone swarms. It is throwing a lot of money at harnessing the new technology, partly with an eye on China. In October, the DoD said it would spend $600 million experimenting with 5G at bases across the country, with partners including AT&T and the General Dynamics Corp. China is taking similar steps. China has sought to be the 5G leader globally and has explored military applications. The US has become increasingly concerned about the deployment of Chinese-made 5G equipment in telecommunications networks abroad, which Washington says comes with security concerns that Chinese companies deny. The concern is that the equipment could be used for spying on network users or to conduct cyber attacks. Well, Chinese government denies it, as well as China's makers of 5G equipment. Chinese equipment has been effectively banned from US telecom networks, but the US military often operates in countries where local telecommunications networks use Chinese gear. While the US can set up secure 5G networks on the basis it operates, when troops go into local towns, their communications may be compromised. This is what the military fears. So the Pentagon is looking for ways to keep American soldiers' communications secure when they deploy overseas, even if those 5G networks use Chinese equipment. The Pentagon could use the new technology to ensure more robust and secure battlefield communications. China and Russia have invested heavily in the ability to jam military communications, and 5G could allow the U.S. to mitigate their effectiveness, says senior scientist at the RAND Corp Dan Gonzalez. But how to employ such system is still being developed. The U.S. Air Force is rethinking the traditional command center. Instead of locating that staff in one place that can be targeted by an adversary, 5G could allow teams to be distributed and mobile. Another potential application of 5G technology is based on its ability to handle massive amounts of data, allowing users to connect millions of devices through the so-called Internet of Things. For the Pentagon, that potentially means being able to track where every bomb and every bullet is stored, making it easier to get the right supplies to the right places on time. This is crucial in wartime. The military is also betting 5G could unlock more futuristic applications. Developers are working on augmented reality and virtual reality for mission planning, training, and combat. The Pentagon also sees 5G enabling drones to form into a swarm more resilient to enemy attacks than one single unmanned aircraft. At the same time, the Pentagon's Emerging Technology Development Unit is trying to ensure enemies can't exploit security vulnerabilities in 5G networks. Containing China's technological cloud has been a pillar of President Trump's technology policy. As a candidate, Mr. Biden said he would invest in bolstering American technology and work with allies to confront Beijing on trade. The American campaign to hinder Chinese technological advances has been among Washington's few bipartisan efforts on the past several years. Leading Democrats and Republicans say Beijing unfairly supports Chinese tech companies, and American lawmakers on both sides have broadly agreed that Huawei is a security threat around the world, a charge Huawei repeatedly rejected. As the new administration moves to strengthen the U.S. positions, domestic investments in tech could be more decisive than foreign policy moves. The U.S. chip industry is lobbying for billions of dollars in incentives for domestic factory, building and research spending. It hopes to capitalize on such investments, which have widespread support in Congress. Some of the Trump administration's moves, such as certain export restrictions, caught companies by surprise, leaving them little time to adjust. Many in the industry say they expect a stronger voice in defining policies. However, tech executives are split in their policy wish lists. Some chip company leaders say export controls designed to cripple Huawei and other Chinese companies have cut into their own sales, leading them to reduce research and development budgets. Some telecom equipment companies support the measures, saying they help offset advantages that Beijing gives to Huawei and other Chinese companies. No matter who sits in the White House, concerns about China would remain. One of the levers the U.S. employs as part of its campaign to pressure its allies to avoid purchasing Chinese-made equipment is the security threat. Over the last few years, the Chinese have developed a reputation for being able to listen in on foreign militaries, store information about them, and initiate cyber attacks on communications infrastructure. Senior American officials have repeatedly warned their European counterparts of the security risk involved in using Chinese-made communications equipment. American security delegations have exposed to their European counterparts evidence that links Huawei to the Chinese security apparatus and the Communist Party, and even threatened to cut off intelligence cooperation with the states that install Chinese communications infrastructure on their territory. In addition, an indictment was filed in the U.S. against Huawei for theft of intellectual property and for activity in Iran and North Korea, while bypassing U.S. sanctions. While the intelligence agencies of many European states are also suspicious of the company's ties to the Chinese establishment that poses a cyber threat, most countries in the continent still see in China more of an opportunity than a risk. The EU economy is already largely reliant on China. Similar to all Cold Wars, the 5G battles are mostly over perception and amassing allies. That's why Huawei was able to recruit Russia, which enjoys butting heads with the US. Russia allows its local cellular network providers to deploy Chinese infrastructure in Moscow. So, who is winning the 5G war? The jury is still out. I would say, despite globalization processes are going through, there is no avoiding a process of decoupling when it comes to controlling the 5G sector. That is just my saying. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I will see you again shortly.